Uh, I mean, normally we shouldn't say things like that. In hindsight, they say hindsight is a beautiful thing, but I'm just thinking because it's a thought that's come to my mind. I'm not going to hold it against Mahendra Singh Dhoni, but a team that had such a horrid run, in England, 4 test matches. Melbourne was a poor start in Australia. Whether India was just trying to be a bit too positive, batting first in Sydney because the only time that the pitch had something for the bowlers, and the only time it was a little challenging for the batsman was on day one. So after winning the toss, I just wondered whether Dhoni could have thought about bowling first and hopefully bat on day 2 and 3. There was a good chance Australia would have got a big score, but India would have batted on day 2 and 3. And because their batting had failed so badly, I don't think too many people would have grudged that decision. It would have been a negative decision, a defensive decision, but it would have been more realistic for Dhoni to take. But as I said, it's in hindsight, so I don't think too much credence to be should be given to that. But it's a thought. What happened in Sydney? To put it very simply, India batted badly. It was a good batting surface with a little bit of spice on day one, and getting all out under 200 was just too bad for India. They just couldn't recover from that. When you talk about difficult conditions or challenging conditions, actually that itself I have a problem with, because when you're talking about a batting lineup with the kind of batting records that they have, and these are guys who are not, their records and averages are not inflated because they played only well in the subcontinent, but they've also played well outside their homes, outside Asia. All of them, when you look at Dravid, Laxman, Sehwag, Tendulkar, everyone, they've got pretty decent performances outside India as well. So after England, I think something's gone wrong somewhere, and it's all happened together. You could say that everyone is on a bit of a dip. And for a batting lineup like this, with the kind of combined ability that they have, that they found the challenge in Melbourne a bit too difficult to handle, the challenge of first day at Sydney difficult to handle, is something that I find hard to accept. England, perhaps you could say that it was a top-class bowling attack. It was the best bowling attack India faced in the last 10 years, and in conditions that were helpful for the bowlers in all three ways: pace, bounce, and swing as well for the seamers. You can't say the same in Australia, because this is not the best bowling attack in the world. It's actually quite inexperienced when you look at the bowling attack. And the pitches haven't been sort of lively, a bit too quick, bit too bouncy for the batsmen. So I have a problem that this batting unit is finding such challenges hard. It should have been matter of course, really, with the kind of experience that they've had. And most of them have made 3 or 4 trips to Australia. Well, I thought the selectors did a pretty good job, considering the kind of culture that we have in India, and the kind of environment that we have in India. That after England, they reacted. They did something about the bowling. So a new sort of bunch of bowlers came into play for Indian cricket, and they showed some promise in the home series. I can understand the slight reluctance to do anything with the batting, because these are men with great track records, and it's not easy to quickly dispense with them. So after England, nothing much was done with the batting. Now we are talking test cricket here. One day cricket, I think it's easier to experiment for the selectors as well, because there are a lot of senior players also taking rest. There's no Laxman, Dravid to add to the problem for the selector when they're selecting batting teams. But test match cricket, I thought it was difficult for them to immediately sack 1 or 2 senior players after England, because some of them really struggled. But I think after 2 test matches here in Australia, I think the time has come for them to take a decision that they are never comfortable with, a decision that they've never taken before, and maybe time has come to drop at least one of the senior stalwarts, just to make a statement, just to show that Indian cricket is hurt by what's happened and is trying to react. There's no point going with the same batting unit when that batting unit has failed so badly. It just defies logic that you want to keep going with them when you've seen in the last 12 innings now that the batting has clearly not clicked as a unit. So I think it is time, at least with one aging player, that they'll go towards youth and show that now they'd rather have setbacks with youth than with guys who've been around for a while. So there are two views that generally a selector takes. There's a short-term view. If they want to take a short-term view, I think VVS Laxman 60 should, strengthen his case, and he plays the next test match. Virat Kohli's form has not been promising, so he gets dropped. Laxman continues. Rohit Sharma comes in for Perth. But if you want to take a long-term view, then you've got to ask yourself, Virat Kohli hasn't looked good, but if he was the big star of the future, the next big thing in Indian cricket just before Australia, is it fair that he just gets 2 test matches to prove himself in Australia? Granted that he failed in West Indies, played reasonably well at home against West Indies, but if you want to blood in youth, and if you think Virat Kohli is a guy you think is special, then doesn't he deserve a longer rope? If you can be patient with the stalwarts for 12 innings, why can't you give Virat Kohli another couple just to be sure, whether he's made for these kind of challenges? Sometimes, players surprise you. They look like, they've got no clue, and suddenly, they find some kind of inspiration somewhere. A little face comes in and everything changes. Even if Laxman gets some runs at Perth, is it going to help India in the long term? How long is Laxman going to last for Indian cricket? So why not, gamble with a young player who, suddenly if he gets a big knock at Perth, the confidence that the young man gets will help Indian cricket for a longer time. And that is the argument that I have, with regards to selection. People, VVS Laxman fans will say, here's a guy who's won so many games in the past and all that. But also when you look at Laxman's record in this dismal phase of Indian batting, he's averaging just 20 in 12 innings. 8 innings in England, 4 in Melbourne. So if India wants to show that they are hurt by what's happened and they want to shake things up, I think that would be the one option they could take. Yeah, and I'm under no illusion that, come per test match, and if you have to do a bit of a gamble on Virat Kohli or VVS Laxman, who's the guy likely to get runs, I think it's going to be more Laxman than Virat Kohli. But as I said, if Virat Kohli gets runs, Indian cricket benefits over a longer period of time. And why have I picked VVS Laxman of, all the aging players is because he looks most aged on the cricket field. When you look at Laxman, I agree with Tendulkar when he says that age is just a number. With him it is. With Dravid, age is just a number. Because these guys could be 38. But on the field, they don't look 38. In comparison, I think Laxman looks his age on the field. And if his batting form has been the kind it has been in overseas matches, I think it's a good time to start phasing out players who are starting to look starting to look their age on the field. And that's why I think Laxman could be an option that India could look at. Not sure they'll take it. It's not in our DNA to take such decisions, but I just wonder whether it's the right thing to do. And there's also another, aspect of the whole thing is now you forget about Virat Kohli. There's another guy called Ajinkya Rahane who's there as a pure batsman on that trip. Now here's a guy who's played 50 first-class matches. His average is about 68. He's got 1800s. At some stage, I think the selector should be obliged to reward guys who perform like that at the first-class level, because then Ranji Trophy performances get some importance. If you continue to ignore those performances and the more you leave out guys who are sort of contending for the spot, you're also what you're doing to the youth is that you're showing that you're not good enough. You might be getting runs at the lower level, but you're just not good enough as these stalwarts, and they're never going to be good enough with a stalwart at the time when the comparison is made. But if you allow a youth to come in, you should allow him the time to become a stalwart himself. I mean, all these stalwarts that we are talking about were uncertain sort of beginners in 1996 and thereabout. So I think that is also very important. Another thing, the more you keep youth out, they start getting more and more in awe of test matches, because they don't get to play that very often. They feel that it's a bit too sacred. They feel that maybe it's a bit too good for them because they are being denied that opportunity. They get quick opportunities in T20, 50 overs cricket. So I just wonder, by leaving them out for such a long period of time, whether you're just getting, test cricket to become such a huge thing in their head that eventually when they get a chance, they might come there feeling, boy, this is a bit too good for me, bit too sacred, and might actually get intimidated by a test match. It was much easier during our time. Once we were, first class performers and we showed some promise, we straight away got a test match. We didn't have to wait that long playing 50 overs cricket and all other international cricket before that one test match came your way. See, our batting has been dismal, but I still maintain that whenever I look at the Indian team with some hope when they are in doldrums, I still look at batting as something that can surprise you, purely because these guys have done it in the past. They've got the track record, but Indian bowling, in the last so many years overseas in testing conditions, testing as in when the pitches have not been that friendly outside India. In India, the turners help Dhoni attack more and the spinners respond and all that. But historically, Indian bowlers generally have failed overseas. People talk about batting, but the bowling also hasn't been that great. And when you look at this bowling attack and you compare it with Australia, Australia also have a pretty inexperienced bowling attack. There was a young Pattinson playing in that test match. You can make comparisons with Pattinson and Umesh Yadav because both are starting off their careers. And there was a huge difference in the problems that Pattinson was created on the same deck as Umesh Yadav. And these are the limitations that India have with their bowling. And I have found as a player as well, when I watched our bowlers in conditions like Australia, when the pitches were flat, that is a time when you need strength as a fast bowler, as a spinner, where you need to sort of extract whatever little help there is in the pitch. And that's where the South African bowling attacks and the Australian bowling attacks, even England, have looked better than India because they've just been stronger. Not so much about skills, but sometimes just about strength, about hitting the seam hard on the pitch. Pattinson does that. So if at all there is little help in the pitch, he'll find it because he really hits the deck hard. And that's where Indians struggle a bit when there is life in the pitch. And if you see India's overseas record, when their bowling has clicked, it's only when there has been life in overseas pitches. If the pitches have been good for batting overseas, India have struggled. It's about what view the selectors take. If they want to, as I said, react, because if they say enough is enough, then I think you'll see some strong decisions coming. If they say, let this tour get over, youngsters will still find these challenges difficult, I don't think you'll see anything change. And, I have maintained a position right at the start of this series that it's one of the most difficult series to predict. India is 2-0 down. But I'm not going to say that 4-0 is on the cards because that's what everyone is saying, because I don't think Australia is that good a team. India has been pretty poor, so that's made Australia look much better than they actually are. So I'm just hoping, the batsmen come together some point of time. The law of averages is bound to catch up at some point of time. And Perth, will have some life in the pitch. So that might just help the Indian bowlers, and India might look a better bowling team than they did in Sydney. So I'm not going to say that India looks certain to go down 4-0. But I'm just interested at this moment to see what view the people who are in power to change things in Indian cricket, what view they take of this scenario where India have lost 6 test matches on the trot overseas, and where a number one team in the world has to really rise to such challenges. They have failed miserably. So for me, it's just about what course of action Indian cricket takes.